Love Bleeds Blue by Emma Calin. Chapter 1. The first bullet hit an officer seated behind her in the personnel carrier. Something wet splashed her cheek and the exposed skin of her neck. The windscreen crazed into an opaque spider's web. She wound down the driver's door glass and pushed her head out into the cold London night. She slammed down the throttle, aiming the vehicle for the end of the street. Metropolitan police radios were yelling, "Urgent assistance! Live fire!" Well, she'd guessed that one already. Everything else was a complete bloody mystery. The engine screeched and jammed. A bullet whined close by in the darkness. 20 minutes earlier, Sergeant Sophia Castellana had been working an overtime shift on a routine crowd control at a football game between Crystal Palace and Tottenham Hotspur. The lives of her crew now depended on her judgment. Perhaps one or more were already dead. Just why the hell had she brought them here? They'd been on their way back to Streatham Police Station when she'd taken a call to a burglary in progress at some posh place in Dulwich. There was a frantic whimpering behind her, mixed with the sound of machine gun fire further away. "What's the score back there?" she yelled. "Simon's lost half his head," came the response. "Dead?" "Yeah." "Right, leave him and bail out. Keep low, spread out and use the parked cars as cover. We're all dead if we stay here." "We could be dead out there," said a young female voice. Sophia had never spoken to the kid, but knew her as a new graduate entry, straight out of the box. "Do as you're fucking well told, 'cause we won't be coming back to drag your corpse out of the bus. We'll try to regroup round the corner on the road ahead. Go now." The doors opened and 12 unarmed regular London bobbies scattered, diving into the shadows of parked vehicles. Bullets slammed into the stricken personnel carrier, shaking it on its springs. Sophia barged open the driver's door and rolled across the street into the gutter. At least now they weren't just one big white target in the night. The merciful shelter of an SUV gave her time to think just what the hell was happening. She crawled out enough to look back down the street. The buildings were exclusive townhouses with railings and maybe basements. Her radio wasn't set to the area frequency, but she guessed local units were also around her in the shadows. About 50 yards away, on the other side of the street, the front door of a house was open. The interior was lit by an opulent chandelier. Outside was a light-coloured BMW, engine running. A wave of realisation that PC Simon Westcott, community cop and father of 3 kids, was dead in the back of the bus almost choked her. "Think, Sophia. Get a grip and think." Some bastard had fired on them, and the odds were that they were still at the house with the open door. If the BMW was the getaway car, the wreck of her bus was blocking the escape. To Sophia's eyes, the weapon in the hand of the hooded guy in the doorway was straight out of the BBC News. It might have been Paris, Brussels, Syria, or some piece of sand with pickup trucks, flags and bandanas. He was yelling at a figure on the ground in the hallway of the house. She made her way along the far side of the parked cars, focusing the gun on the curved horn-like shape hanging underneath. She had no firearms training, but this had to be the machine gunner. The gunman turned his back to her. the same curved horn projected from the rear pocket of his jeans. She watched him calmly push his foot onto the neck of the guy on the floor as he reached behind. He flipped the other device from the gun. She got it. He was reloading and about to perform at least his second kill of the day. She measured the distance. It was a straight 35-yard dash to the door. If she could hit the gunman at full speed with her 127 pounds before he could reload, there was a chance. Just this one chance. About 10 yards from impact, she remembered she'd set the timer for a curry in her oven. Well, what the fuck? She lived alone. She heard the click of the magazine as she smashed into his back. He crashed forward into the base of a long-case grandfather clock. She had no idea what to do next. She was sprawled out partly on the legs of the gunman and partly on top of the guy on the floor. God, he was young, almost half her age, 25 at most. He scrambled up and looked at her. "Jump on him! Kick his fucking balls in!" she screamed. She swung her boot into the gunman's face as he tried to wriggle the gun from under his body. He was white, clean-shaven, about 30, and built like a commando. She stamped on his hands and his wrists in a frenzy of fear and anger. The young man knelt on the killer's shoulders and held him down by his gingery, curly hair. For a second their eyes met as he looked up into her face. Probably he was as afraid as her, but he had a calmness, almost as if he had already accepted death. "What's your name?" he said. "What's my name? Bloody hell!" The banality and weirdness of the question stunned her as much as everything that had happened. What was all this? "Tell me, please. I may not get the chance to find out." The gunman was writhing under their weight. She could see that his face was swelling, and the classic sign of a fractured jaw. The gun still trapped beneath him. "Sophia. Sergeant Sophia Castellana." The young man almost smiled. His eyes were dark, his skin slightly olive and smooth. She wondered if he'd ever shaved. The muzzle of a police diplomatic protection group issue Glock 17 weapon stopped a few inches from the gunman's head. The hall had filled with cops. "Put your hands behind your back," said a hard voice tinged with military steel. It was the kind of voice that didn't ask questions. She looked around. A dozen weapons were trained on the back of the felled gunman. She heard the ratchet and snap of handcuffs. There was a smell of adrenaline-pumping fear, which she knew as her own. She was fighting to hold back tears. Plainclothes protection squad type officers surrounded the young man as they ushered him away. He was tall enough to look over and catch her eyes one last time. He nodded calmly at her. "I won't forget you. I'll never forget," he said.